educator, and speaker who equips emerging leaders with the tools they need to make a difference in their lives and in the world around them. Her legal career has been centered on human rights, with a focus on assisting in the empowerment of underserved communities in countries such as Costa Rica, the Netherlands, Haiti, and Cuba. While running her own practice, the Wilkerson Law Office, she was recognized by Super Lawyers magazine as a Northern California rising star for 6 consecutive years. Asha was also honored by the Wiley Bar Association as Attorney of the Year in 2019 and by the Sacramento chapter of the National Lawyers Guild with the Social Justice Award in 2020. Now serving as department chair of the Legal Studies program at American River College in Sacramento, California, Asha revels in showing students how to explore, design, and thrive in careers within and beyond the law. Welcome, Asha. It is so wonderful that we have you here today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so the very first question I want to answer for the audience is, you are such a social justice warrior. How does that tie back to small business and what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the title of the honor of being called a social justice warrior. I definitely take that to heart. I would say, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I started looking at my community. I live in Oakland, California. I started looking around at the community, looking at the communities I'd visited in other countries and in other cities in the United States, and realized that entrepreneurship is such a big part of the ecosystem of the economy. So in Haiti, in Cuba, people are always fixing their own cars, their own bicycles. They are building things. There isn't this culture of getting something new. Part of that is, a large part of that is just because of the resources, but you see people who are innovative and who are creative, right? So I took that experience and brought it back here. And I really believe that one of the best ways to transform our neighborhoods, our families, our communities is through entrepreneurship. And so when you start to build your own business, you can hire the people that you want to hire, which then makes a difference in their lives, which helps them to be better in their family, contribute to their family economically, gives people a purpose. And so I think it's really a ripple effect, and you can do that by empowering people. So the social justice piece of it in business is giving folks the tools that they need who might not normally have access to it. And then the output of it is creating businesses and entrepreneurs who are savvy, who can live a life that they want using the business that they have just created for themselves.
And I think that's so true. So many people here in the United States start businesses because the corporate world may not be serving them, or the working for somebody else just isn't a good fit, and they're looking for something that will provide a platform for them to be able to provide for their families, and possibly even provide a legacy, something that they can share and pass on to their children or beyond.
Right. And when you become an entrepreneur, nobody gives you permission. Nobody has to give you permission to be an entrepreneur, right? So when you think of the systems that have traditionally held certain groups of folks out, you get around that by creating your own business, right? I don't have to go to somebody and say, hey, can you give me a job? Because I can create my own economy and self-sufficiency that way, which also changes the landscape and the social structure.
I love that explanation. That is fabulous. So let's talk a little bit about the ways that you help entrepreneurs. One huge one is the business structure. So we talk about sole proprietorships, LLCs, S corporations. First of all, what's the difference between those?
Right, absolutely. So, yes, so one of the ways that I help, first of all, I want to say that most people go to attorneys when there's something wrong, right? They don't have a good taste in their mouth from attorneys because you go when you're getting divorced or when your business is in trouble or when you've been terminated for a job. And so that just has this negative kind of connotation and experience around attorneys. But if you think of attorneys like doctors, right? Your annual physical, you need to go as preventative medicine. You can avoid a lot of those negative experiences and learn how to build a business that stays in good health, right? Instead of coming to fix something after it has already gone wrong. So, to answer your question about the different types of business structures, sole proprietorship is just, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to start selling stuff. I'm going to do a business. The sole proprietorship is an extension of me. There's no legal separation between me and the business. So if I do something in the business that causes some liability, I personally am liable for that, right? Because there's no separation between the business and myself. With an LLC, it's a step up from a sole proprietorship that gives you legal separation. It has different tax implications, but you are taxed as an individual as if you're earning the money as a sole proprietor. But it gives you that legal separation, so you could sell an LLC. If somebody sues you, your assets are protected. You could bring somebody into the business and give them part ownership with an LLC, and you can't do that with a sole proprietorship. And then the next sort of level of protection or next level of business is a corporation, which is a C Corp is the default, right? Corporation that has two levels of ownership. You have the founders who are the shareholders. There's two types of shareholders. There's the preferred stock or preferred shareholders, and then the common stock, right? Preferred are the decision makers, like Mark Zuckerberg and his inner circle, right?
Right.
The common stock is all of us that own stock in Facebook. We are technically owners of the company, but we don't have any decision-making power at all. As much as we might want to vote on some of these privacy policies, we don't get the opportunity to do that because we're not that kind of an owner. So a corporation has its own tax structure as well. I believe you double check with an accountant, but I think it's taxed at 15%. There's more separation between the business and the owners. And depending on what you want to do for taxes, or if you're trying to raise money and get investors, a corporation might be a good structure. So sole proprietorship, where it's just you, no separation. Corporation, where there's much more separation. And then an LLC is a blend between the two of them.
Okay. And in an S corporation and LLC, you do have meetings, you do have paperwork requirements, things like that, correct?
So in a corporation, you're supposed to have an annual meeting where you keep minutes. An LLC does not have those kind of paperwork requirements about them. So LLCs are easier to manage, right? But if you have an LLC with multiple people who are members or owners with you, then you do want to have regular business meetings and keep notes of that. But there's no legal requirement to do that in an LLC. In a corporation, there is a legal requirement. And then you mentioned S corporation. An S corporation, it's actually a tax election that you choose when you file with the IRS. So people say S corporations and that sort of is a thing, but it's a corporation that has S tax status. So you don't form an S corp, you form a C corp, and then you can choose to be taxed with this S election. And the requirements are still the same for the reporting requirements for an S corp and a C corp. It just changes how the owners are taxed.
Fabulous. That's actually a really simple explanation. So now I have another question, which is, should everybody form an LLC? I mean, there's no 100%, but is there kind of an understanding of when it's a good idea to form an LLC?
Yeah, absolutely. So from my legal perspective, right, and my position is always going to be to try and protect you as much as possible. From that standpoint, I always think it's a good idea for someone to form an LLC or a corporation, right? Form a legal entity and have that legal protection. We've all seen these stories or heard these stories of these entrepreneurs that start up, they put all this money in, the business goes belly up and the next day they have a new company. How can they do that? It's because they have a legal structure that when the business goes belly up, they can walk away from it. The debts die with the business. They are protected. Their credit is protected and they can move on to the next thing relatively unscathed, right? So that helps to protect you in that way. In addition to if there's a lawsuit or something like that, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. The one question that people usually have is how much money is it going to cost me? And how much money do I need to make to do it? So there's this myth that's floating around in California that it costs you $800 a year to have an LLC. And that's not actually true. It's not an $800 fee. It's an $800 minimum tax. So businesses pay taxes just like you as an individual pay taxes. The minimum tax in California for a business is $800. Chances are, especially if you're making a profit in business, your tax liability is going to be more than $800 anyway. So you're already over that threshold, and it's really not going to make much of a difference. If you operate at a loss, though, Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a bill into law. So between January 1st of 2020, so last year, and January 1st of 2024, the state is waiving that $800 minimum tax for any business entity that starts up. So for the next 3 years, we will not have that minimum tax. So that should no longer be a deterrent for folks starting a business. The next part of the money thing is, does it really make a difference in terms of taxes and how much revenue do I need to bring in? It does make a difference. And I would suggest talking to an accountant to really see, to work out the numbers. But when you are a sole proprietor or an LLC, you pay a self-employment tax. If you are an LLC that chooses the S tax election, you do away with that self-employment tax and you're able to keep more money in your pocket. For business owners that have children, you're able to hire your children as an LLC and you can pay them up to, I believe it's $12,500. That is tax deductible. So you're making the money, you put your kids on payroll. They should actually be doing a job, but if you've got teenagers, maybe they handle your social media, maybe they help respond to emails, whatever it is, you can pay your children and it's tax deductible for you as a business, right? You're going to pay someone anyway. Now you don't have to pay the taxes. You using an LLC or a corporation, you can also set up your own retirement accounts. That's one thing that I think a lot of us don't think about as entrepreneurs. One of the first things we ask when we go to get a job is, what's my 401k and do you match, right? But we don't necessarily think that we can be doing the same thing for us as our sole, as business owners, right? But you can set up a retirement account, contribute some of the money that you're earning for revenue to the business into the retirement account. It becomes tax deductible for you as a business owner. So all of that to say is that more than just looking at the money and the responsibility, I want people to start looking at these business structures as tools to really build and secure their financial future and to grow beyond just the money that you earn today. But what are you setting up for yourself, for your children, for those around you in the future? And when we look at the top 10% of wealth owners in America, majority of them have their own business or there's a family business there, right? So they're on to something. And we just got to catch up.
This is great information. I love talking about the taxes, and certainly I was unaware that Gavin Newsom had waived the tax floor for the LLCs for the next few years, and that's fabulous news. It opens up a huge opportunity for businesses that are small now but are looking to grow over the next couple of years. So that's wonderful. And now let's kind of switch it up a little bit and talk about contracts. So when you're in business, you're signing a lot of contracts. Most of the time it's with companies that are well established. They have boilerplate language. what should small business owners do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I call it the 3 Ps in contracts that you need to be aware of. And it's party, it's price, and performance. So the first thing about the party, and actually let me go back, because you're right. A lot of these big companies do have boilerplate contracts. And it's like every time you download a new app to your phone, you just hit accept for the terms and conditions. You don't really read them, and whatever it is, right? And most of the time we're okay. But if you were going to be in a position where you're negotiating a contract, whether it's a new lease for a space or working with a independent contractor or hiring a website designer, these are the top 3 things that you need to pay attention to. There's more, but I'll give you these now. So the parties is really important. You want to know, what is the entity name that's going to be responsible for paying you? Is it the individual or is it their business? And do you have their business name correct? Or is it, when you say McDonald's, that's not right, right? Each McDonald's, some of them are corporate owned, some of them are franchises, but you have to have the actual entity name, the business that owns that McDonald's location, and put it down. Because if you have to go to court or some third party has to come in and help you enforce the contract against the other party, the third party has to know who you're talking to. Who was this agreement made between? So the parties is really important. Get the names right for that. The price is especially important. Most people remember to put, the dollar amount, but not just the price. How are you going to get paid? Is there a penalty if the payment is late? What other consequences are there? What are the forms and the methods of payment that are acceptable? Because again, if you have to go and enforce and you say someone didn't pay me, there's going to be some third party who knows nothing about the negotiations, only what's on the paper. And you want to make it clear enough that it's easy for that third party to help you win, right? To help you out. And the last thing is the performance. What is the activity that is actually supposed to be performed? What is due? So I had an example with a former client of mine. He engaged in this contract without me, right? He asked me to help him enforce it later. But he had hired someone to build out this platform for his point of sale system. And they generally said what would happen, but didn't put performance metrics in there and didn't have a limit on how many reviews he would get or revisions that he would get for the product. And so, of course, the designer at some point said, I'm done. I gave you the thing. And he's like, no, this isn't what I wanted at all, right? This is not it. You're not done yet. And so putting specifically, what is the performance that you expect on both sides? I got to pay you. You're going to teach me how to be a great CEO, right? But what does that look like? Is it monthly meetings? Is it a workshop? Is it a workbook? What is that? So then again, if there's a third party that has to come and look and see what's going on, that third party can say, oh, it's really clear. Did you do these things you said you would do? No? Okay, then you owe some money to make up for it.
Perfect. So party,
price,
and performance.
Yep, you
Great.
got
We'll
it.
definitely have to put that in the chat.
Yes.
And, because that sounds great. And then employment law. Okay. That's actually an area where I tend to tell people to hire an expert, because most solopreneurs or small businesses really don't have HR expertise.
Right.
And I feel like it's not their core competency.
Right.
But I'm ready to make a hire. What do we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like that you said go to the expert. That's kind of my message in general for these things, because there are people who will give you advice based on their experience and well-meaning advice, but it's not necessarily right. I had all the time I hear that about legal advice. I'm like, who told you? Oh, my friend down the street, right? Don't do that. Go to someone who has something to lose, right? Who actually went to school for it so they can give you the correct information. But to answer your question more specifically about hiring, you got to start with, are you hiring an employee or a contractor? And there is a legal difference between the two of those. And it's not just because I decided they're going to be a contractor. There's some real requirements about what a contractor is and how they operate. So generally they have their own business. They have multiple clients. They're doing something that's different than the core work of the business. So I have a law firm. If I hire another attorney to do legal work that I'm doing, they should be an employee. If I hire an accountant to keep my books, my law firm doesn't do accounting, I can pay that accountant as an independent contractor, right? So you're looking at the type of work that's being done, and how it's different from the core of the business. The contractor has their own tools. They supervise themselves. You say what you want in terms of the outcome, but you're not telling them how to do it. If anything other than that, it's an employee. And the presumption in California is that it's going to be an employee. And probably the presumption nationwide is that it's going to be an employee. So once you know whether or not you have an employee or a contractor, you've received that advice, you need to have either an employment agreement or an independent contractor contract. And both of those lay out the expectations. An employee is at will in California. And so you have the right to terminate them whenever you want, as long as it's not for a discriminatory reason. And they have the right to end the employment relationship whenever they want. For a contractor, it's for a set period of time or for a project. It's not this indefinite kind of relationship like an employee, right? So you want to have, again, the same 3 Ps in the contract. You want to have that in your independent contractor contract. Who is the party? What are we paying them for? And what are we expecting them to do? And then after that, you want to make sure that you have the required documents for an employee. There's probably about 7 that are required in California, and you can get those either online or talk to an expert, and they'll let you know exactly what needs to be given for that. And then if you have a contractor, then you're pretty much done once you sign the independent contractor agreement. And I know a lot of folks start up and they say, I'm just going to hire contractors because it's cheaper. And initially it might be cheaper because you don't have to pay payroll taxes and all of that. But if the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board or unemployment discovers, or mainly those two, if they discover that you've been paying someone as an independent contractor when they should have been an employee, not only will you have to go back and pay back taxes, but there's penalties that could be anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 in the state of California. And if someone gets injured on the job, then you also have to come out of pocket for their medical expenses. So is it a light undertaking? No. Is it risky if you willfully do it wrong? It is. Are you likely to get caught? I don't have a percentage for you, but I think if you get caught, then you'll never think that it was worth the risk. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I love that. Again, hugely helpful, because I think, as you pointed out earlier, most people think that, well, I'll just hire independent contractors. And I think your example of, you can hire an accountant if you're not an accounting firm, but if that's your core business, then those people shouldn't be independent contractors.
That's correct. Yep.
And it was a great way to differentiate between them. I really appreciate it. So now let's talk a little bit about things that you have coming up, because I know you've got something exciting that's just like right around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for asking. I am so excited about this new membership that I have coming up. It's called Transcend, and the mission is to build a business and leave a legacy. So going back to changing communities, changing our families, using our business to really get to where we want to go. How do we do that? There is a gap in entrepreneurship of information and access to information. So in this membership community, we do legal trainings, we do financial trainings. I have accounting experts, CPAs, so certified public accountants that come in and do workshops. I have marketing experts that come in where we meet 3 times a month in one place to get the foundational tools that you need to build a business and leave a legacy. There's a lot of coaches that are out there that are doing the mindset work, which is awesome. We'll do a little bit about that too, about how do you hire. We'll do a little bit about that too. But a lot of folks really miss the legal foundation and the business foundation, those really important tools that you need. Because if you build a great business, but your foundation is weak, as soon as you hit some adversity, whether it's a tax bill or a disgruntled former employee, your business has the opportunity to crumble. And we don't want that, right? So it's not a replacement community. It's an addition to everything that you're already doing. Let's get you the information at a rate that's affordable to really help you build your business and leave your legacy.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, I'm going to ask you to put information about Transcend, information about how people can contact you if they're interested in learning more about whether they should start an LLC or a corporation. All of these different issues that you've brought up. So I'm going to ask you to put that in chat as soon as we're done.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to ask you if you will come back and talk with me at a later date about your philanthropy.
I would love to.
That is a huge, huge thing for me. It's part of what my business is built on. And I think that it's a really important topic to talk about how we can use our businesses for good.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. I would love to. Yes, absolutely.
great. We will definitely make that happen. All right. So thank you so much, Asha. And definitely if you have if you have questions, be sure and contact her and make time to find out how to strengthen your foundation of your business.
Yes.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.